Have you ever wondered what the real difference is between religion and spirituality, or being religious and being spiritual? Well, stay tuned because we are going to uncover the difference between religion and spirituality. Hi, my name is Michelle Fondin. I'm the author of 12 published books, including this one. This is the galley copy, or this is the proof copy. This book, The 8 Limbs of Yoga for Modern Times, a practical guide to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, will be released on Earth Day, April 22nd. You can order author-signed copies on my website. You can pre-order the Kindle version on Amazon. All the links are below. And if you are a yoga practitioner, a yoga teacher, yoga studio owner, you can download a free source guide to the 8 Limbs of Yoga. It's a 9-page PDF. I call it the cheat sheet of the 8 Limbs of Yoga if you want to use it for your yoga classes. So you can go to my website and download that. The link is below. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for subscribing below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications. And thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. I teach meditation online on demand. This is the best course ever. I'm not gonna lie. It's because I first took this course. Best course ever to learn meditation on your own. It's a silent mantra-based meditation. You get your mantra with me over Zoom. Otherwise, it's a self-directed course on my website. You can start that on demand today. What is the difference between religion and spirituality? Now, even if you're not into yoga, not into the Yoga Sutras yet, because you will be, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with me and my spiritual journey? What does spirituality versus religion really have to do with me on my spiritual journey? And what do the 8 Limbs of Yoga and Eastern philosophy have to do with my journey? Well, in fact, it has everything to do with your journey, because you may have been raised in a religion. You may have been raised with an educational upbringing that included religion, whether you were raised Catholic like me, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Jain, Sikh, whatever religion you happened to be raised in, it is a part of who you are. And you may, in fact, have a distaste for religion because of your upbringing. Now, what is spirituality? Spirituality is usually self-directed. Most spiritual-based beliefs come from Eastern philosophy. Whether we are talking about Buddhist philosophy or whether we're talking about Vedic, Indian, ancient Indian philosophy, usually that is where this thought, this philosophy is coming from. So that is where the 8 Limbs of Yoga tie in, because the 8 Limbs of Yoga are based on Vedic thought, Indian philosophy from ancient Indian texts. So when you talk about Kundalini and the chakras and awakening and ascension and divine consciousness, all of that comes from Vedic thought, from Indian philosophy. So you might not have even known that. You think of it as pop culture maybe, because you're seeing it, hearing it on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, but you might not know exactly where that comes from. And it comes from the East. It comes from Indian philosophy. And even the Buddha came from India. So there you go. It's all tied back right to India. And of course, the 8 Limbs of Yoga comes from Indian philosophy. So that's how it all ties in. We're going to wrap that up with a bow for you. So let's look at religion and why religion is formed, how it's formed, and what is its purpose. Religion that you might be way more familiar with if you were raised in a specific religion. A religion takes the concept of God or a deity or many deities, just depending on what you believe in, and it wraps it into an institutionalized system with scriptures, religious texts, if you will, with leaders, and usually a building of some sort, whether it's a church or a mosque or a temple or whatever you want to call it. So it's that. And then there are usually rules, regulations, and dogma attached to the religion to get you to a specific place. Now, usually with religions, there is a rite of passage, a rite of initiation, such as a baptism. And there's a rite of passage, a rite of initiation, and there's usually spiritual leaders that are initiating you into the said religion. And there are rituals associated with that specific religion. There are rules to follow. If you don't follow the rules, then of course you are condemned. You're usually going to hell or going to a bad place, or in the case of something like Hinduism, you are made to repeat lives over and over again. Religion is usually a structured form. And I look at religion as a stepping stone toward spirituality. It is a lot easier for someone who was raised religiously to have a stepping stone into spirituality because there is a basis for it. It's much harder for someone who was not raised in any specific religion or who didn't believe in a deity or a higher power and then move on to spirituality. It's a much bigger jump. But if you were raised in a religion, and you might even, again, have distaste for that religion, or you might have abandoned that religion long ago, but still, it's a much easier jump to jump from a religious educational background into spirituality. There you go. So let's look at spirituality. How is spirituality different? Spirituality is typically an individual path. It is the individuated path between you and your higher source, between you and God, between you and your higher self, between you and your soul. When I talk about yoga philosophy, when I talk about Indian philosophy, I talk about the pathway to self-realization. Now, you've heard me say that on this channel in many different videos, but I bet you didn't know it was tied to yoga, because it is. That is the pathway of yoga. The pathway of yoga is the pathway to self-realization. So self-realization is realizing, coming to union with your higher spiritual self. So that is an individual path. It usually requires solitude, whereas religion typically requires you to be in a community or in a group, and it typically has a leader or many leaders, whereas the self-realized path, the spiritual path, typically is you going into solitude with meditation and moving through what is known as the awakening process in order to find yourself, your higher self, right? That is the pathway. So the pathways are typically very, very different because there is an external path in religion where it's always you checking upon yourself toward another, such as something external to you, like a goal, achieving the rules of the religion, being able to observe certain laws of the religion, being able to go according to what your pastor or what your rabbi says to you, for example. Whereas the self-realized path is very individual. No one is going to tell you you're doing this wrong. You're doing spirituality wrong. So that is the main differences between the two. In my book, I open up with a quote from the Upanishads. Now, the Upanishads is an ancient Indian text that predates the 8 limbs of yoga from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. I know that's a lot right now, but the Upanishads were the basic texts from over 2,000 years ago that were songs, verses from teacher to student, and they were passed down through the generations. Now, the religion that is called Hinduism and many other offshoots of Hinduism base their knowledge on the Upanishads, but that doesn't mean the Upanishads were religious. They were more spiritual and self-realized than religious. But I open up with a quote from the Shaivatashvatara Upanishad, and it's "Wake up from this dream of separateness." Wake up from this dream of separateness. That is from the Shaivatashvatara Upanishad. I had to say that slow. It's a very long word. But wake up from this dream of separateness. That really is, in a nutshell, the journey of spirituality. Okay, I'm going to say that again. That quote is really the journey of spirituality. It's waking up from your dream of separateness. Whereas Most religions would have you think that you and God are separate. The self-realized path says you and God are not separate. So there you go. That's really the core difference between religion and spirituality. To emphasize before we go into can the two coexist, religion points you to the external. It points you to a religious set of scriptures or texts. It points you to rules and regulations that you must follow, a dogma that if you don't follow this, then you're not being a true practitioner of this specific religion. Whereas the spiritual path is a more individual and self-realized path that through the experience of meditation, you can realize your higher spiritual self or move into a self-actualized, self-realized state where you perceive yourself as one with the divine. So there is no checking in with an external source to say, am I doing this right? It's more a pathway to self-discovery. The last thing I wanted to say about the differences is religion tends to be based in fear and spirituality tends to be based in love, unconditional love. Here's why I'm saying that. A religion can pretend that it's about love, but really what it's about is fear. It's like, if you don't do this, then this will happen to you. If you don't do A, then B. If you don't do A, then B might be you will be excommunicated. Or if you don't do this, then you're a sinner. If you don't do this, then God will be mad at you, or even God will punish you, or you will go to hell. And so there's always this sense of, if I don't do this, I am very fearful of what might happen to me. Whereas spirituality is the pathway to unconditional love. It's the pathway to love, acceptance, unity, non-judgment, peace, bliss, and joy. That leads me to, how can the two coexist? How can you coexist as a person who would like to follow a religion, but a person who also would like to follow the spiritual path? I am a firm believer that the two can coexist. I want you to hear that, because a lot of people are afraid of spirituality, the spiritual path, the awakened path, because they're really afraid of abandoning their religion or abandoning their family who is a part of a religion, because most oftentimes religion and culture are very closely intertwined. Religion, culture, which include celebrations, that includes holidays. So a lot of people think like, oh no, if I go on my individuated spiritual path, that means I have to abandon my family, abandon my religion. And that is not at all the case. You may do things very differently and not adhere to the dogma of the religion, not adhere to the every single solitary rule that says you must do this in order to be a good person. Usually, those rules and regulations are man-made. They're not God-made, they're man-made. They're man-interpreted. And in my book, The 8 Limbs of Yoga, I really go deeply into this. Just know that you can still enjoy, for example, you can still enjoy the Bible and Bible scriptures, and you can even enjoy going to church while still being on the spiritual path. You can still celebrate Christmas and Easter and Hanukkah and Passover with your family and still enjoy your spiritual journey. The two are not in opposition. They are absolutely not in opposition. I want you guys to really grasp this and understand this. The other day, I was talking with someone. We were talking about the 12-step program. The 12-step program is really based in Christianity. So you must believe in a higher power if you're following the 12 steps, or you're asked to believe in a higher power. That doesn't mean God. It means any higher power. Any power that is greater than you, a universal source, if you will. It could be unconditional love. It could be, someone said to me once, it could be the doorknob. That doesn't make any sense to me. But something that is a higher power than you if you're following a 12-step program. Now, I have no issues with the 12-step program. I have no issues with that whatsoever. I have no issues with Christianity. I don't. Now, there is Christianity as practiced by Jesus, and then there's Christianity that people misinterpret Of course, right? But misinterpretation happens in everything, right? There are bad players in everything, not just religion. So some of you came to my channel long ago, maybe 6 years ago, when I started producing videos on twin flames. Now, I tried to present the twin flame material as I was experiencing it, and later as my clients were experiencing it. So I never presented it in a way that wasn't pure or firsthand experience. However, if you happen to check out some of those documentaries on Netflix and Amazon Prime, you know, there were people that were not so pure and that were roping people into lies so that they could gain greater power. But that happened in yoga organizations and still probably happens in yoga organizations. It happens all across the board, not just in religion. So don't mistakenly throw out what I say, like throw out the baby with the bathwater. Just because there are bad players happening in your religious organization, it doesn't mean the whole thing's bad. So I believe the two can coexist. However, what you will see happen is that if you continue on your individuated spiritual path where you know that there is no separateness between you and God, that you will graduate from your religion, meaning the religion will seem nice and fine and kind, and certain scriptures will speak to you. And you'll find it endearing and peaceful and hopeful and loving. But at some point, you're going to transcend those, and you're going to transcend even the scriptures and the spiritual texts, because that is the point and purpose of spiritual texts. It's not to stay rooted in them. It is to transcend them, to move beyond them and find that internal experience of God and that point of oneness where you know there is no division. That being said, it's really important that you honor others' traditions and beliefs while you are on your spiritual journey. Even while you're on your religious journey. You could be on a religious journey, but it's really important that you honor other people's belief systems, because everybody is on their own path. And what may be right for one person is not right for the next person. And so as you open up on your spiritual journey, it's important to have compassion, love, forgiveness for others, and not be condescending toward others just because you find that your path is better or it's superior or you're having different experiences that are more expansive. That's part of what unconditional love is about. It's about letting others be who they be. It's about letting others be who they are and not trying to micromanage their journey. Going back to that story about the 12 steps and talking with the person who was angry, really angry that the 12-step program brought religion or Christianity into the mix with the 12-step group. Now, that is not the case. It's not about Christianity or religion. The 12 steps really bring in God or higher source or higher spirit or higher power into it. But the fact that the person was angry just shows that they had wounds related to their religious upbringing. The whole point of letting others be on their path, the path that they are on. And it doesn't mean that you need to disregard the entire thing just because one thing doesn't agree with you. And I feel if we were all a little bit more accepting of others in their own spiritual journey and their own religious path or spiritual path, that we could help spread a little bit more love on the planet by being okay with everyone having their own path. So let me ask you a question. Do you feel that you have been true to your spiritual path or religious path? Do you feel that you're living your most authentic self and connecting with who you truly are? Only you can answer that question. And the second question I'm asking you, and you can put the answer in the comments below, is, are you exploring your inner world, or are you living in fear of trying to keep up with expectations of the external world, meaning the rules, the regulations, following what other people say you should do or shouldn't do? And that's really important, is asking yourself that question Am I honoring my inner world? Am I exploring my inner world? Or am I living in fear by just blindly following what other people say I should do? Those are the questions for the week. So I want to thank you so much for joining me here today. I invite you to download that free source guide to the 8 limbs of yoga, which is based on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Even if you're not a yoga practitioner, the guidelines will help you toward self-realization. Secondarily, do check out my brand new book, The 8 Limbs of Yoga for Modern Times, a practical guide to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. If you're interested in starting meditation, you can start on demand at my course below. Thanks so much for your support of my channel. Please share this with anyone who could benefit from anything on spirituality, because it's all on my channel. And I'll see you in the next video.